KFC, in the little utensil packets, they have salt. You need that. Who has KFC and goes, this needs salt? Usually after the second bite, my hand starts to swell. By the third bite, I look like a ballpark Frank.
Good morning. It is Friday, June the 9th. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have Cult of Moral Grayness, Why Be a True Conservative, Frame the Argument, No Free Lunch, The Rape of the Mind, MSNBC, and we will have Vivek-Ramaswamy versus Donald Trump. You decide. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and remove your hats for the national anthem of the United States of America.
Thank you. So we've concluded No Free Lunch, but it's 250 economic truths, and so I'm just going to go ahead and start repeating the book again from the beginning. So here we go with No Free Lunch, 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
This is Audible.
There's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths, written by David-Bahnsen, narrated by David-Bahnsen. Dedication. This book is dedicated to Eric Baumer and Aaron Bradford. Far more than my Triple B book club companions for over 15 years, you have been my brothers and friends for nearly 30 years. I'm a better person as a result of having you both in my life. There are no words to capture the gratitude I have for you and your love for me. May you flourish daily in freedom and virtue, cherishing the good life we all care about so dearly. Introduction. One of the challenges in understanding economics, or for that matter, teaching it, is first defining it. There are all sorts of subjects and disciplines where intelligent men and women disagree over particulars, but few I can think of where the basic definition of the subject is disagreeable. I'm convinced that a substantial amount of the travesty of economic teaching permeating today starts with a flawed definition that is attempting to be taught. Dylan Pauman defines an economy as the cultivation of creation through human labor for the provision of human needs through relationships of exchange. This captures the essence of the great contribution from Ludwig von Mises that fundamentally economics is the study of human action. Pauman adds the anthropological necessity to how we understand human action as the basis for economics, and he specifies the area of human action that is distinctly economic, that is, relationships of exchange. It is my desire in this book to present basic truths of economics, and yet if economics were what we are told it is today, a series of metrics and formulas intended to optimize the distribution of scarce resources, the book would primarily be a math or science book. This book is not a math or science book because economics is not a math or science discipline. Vladimir Lenin famously said that any business could be run by, quote, anybody who can read and write and knows the first 4 rules of arithmetic, end quote. His egalitarian worldview that desired everyone doing the same work and receiving the same wages only partially explains his tragically flawed view of what a business was and how it could succeed. Lenin's fundamental flaw was not understanding the humanity of a business, which is to say, the innovation and creativity that drive enterprise. But even that can be restated more accurately this way. Lenin and all socialist, Marxist, collectivists failed to understand that man is created in the image of God. Business cannot be reduced to the commoditized functions of technocratic operations because business flows from the creative spirit of mankind, and the creative spirit of mankind comes from our status as image bearers of God. If you get this wrong, you will get everything else wrong. Lenin is case in point. So it is with the broad study of economics. Not only do our business endeavors in the modern context of professional pursuits stem from important truths about the human person, but so does everything that forms civilization. It has always been so. My vision for this book is not merely to address contemporary controversies in the context of human action, but the entire foundation of the field, its aim, its purpose, its end. As you will see in the very first section of Truths Presented, human flourishing is the aim of my study of economics. I do not believe a secular view of markets, divorced from the dignity of mankind which flows out of creation, can lead to the kind of human flourishing for which our hearts yearn. A secular view of markets can be thought of as right-wing, Randian, or left-wing, collectivist, but both stand together in failing to put the focus on the dignity of the human person, a dignity understood best by viewing man as image bearers of God. God is the creator and innovator, and man as his image bearer is to be creative and innovative. If we never studied another thing about economics but understood that, we could do far, far worse. I chose the topics that I did to organize these economic truths because I believe they synthesize opportunity for application with key first principles. I do not want a student of economics to consider minimum wage laws without first understanding basic principles of economics, and yet there's no point in studying the principles of economics without the ability to apply them to issues such as minimum wage laws. I would suggest that the vast majority of poor economic policies we have seen over the years do not come from those who disbelieved key principles, but rather those who failed to consistently apply the principles they claimed to believe into matters of application. These subjects can be messy, complicated, and lead to temptations to sway from our belief system. What I want this book to do is help solidify one's belief system about economics and aid in that application to the messy issues of our day. I've tried my best to limit use of obscure or esoteric vocabulary in the book. Some expressions may seem awkward at first glance, the knowledge problem, but I hope they will be defined and explained in such a way that you will see the indispensability of the framework. Using that very example, it is the knowledge problem, how information is best seen and understood in a society, that is the basis for my view of a market economy, of a limited role of the state and such, and for basic doctrines of social organization. The verbiage is all intended to be adequate for the task of explanation and formation without becoming excessive in complexity. This book contains quotes from a plethora of people, and I don't mind saying that the vast majority of them are masters. These are largely cream-of-the-crop economists who have substantially informed my economic worldview, but who also have substantially informed economic policy, debate, and discussion in some cases for centuries. That said, there should be no assumption that I agree with every individual and every other thing they advocated. And there should be no assumption that each individual I quote would agree with one another on every issue. I largely avoided those whose overall net contribution to public thought I mostly disagree with. There may be one or two exceptions. But even where I agree with 60 to 95% of someone's intellectual contributions, that leaves some areas where I may disagree. The only assurance I can offer you is that where I quote a given author, I surely agree with what I have quoted. The book subtitle is 250 Economic Truths for a reason. I believe this book is made up of truthful statements about economics, and I've tried to provide truthful commentary around each statement. In the year this book has been written, we are somehow engaged in a great debate over basic matters of freedom and agency in our market economy. Individual responsibility stock is trading at a lower and lower level. Class warfare is at a high, and many on the right are joining those on the left in disdain for economic achievement. A materialistic view of poverty alleviation rules throughout the culture, one that neither alleviates poverty nor solves for the woes of what truly ails mankind. I am unwilling to view the subject of taxation or the size of government as merely econometric. Measurements of gross domestic product, GDP, may serve a data purpose in some analysis, but they are not the aim of economic study. We care about economic growth because we care for the human person, and the human person can flourish when they are free to grow and prosper. What optimizes this aim is my desire, and what impedes this aim is my enemy. If and where increased government spending impedes future economic growth, it needs to be understood and analyzed for that purpose, not as a mere data analysis. There are two leading trends in economics right now that must be resisted. One is the mystifying movement towards greater collectivism as a means of improving the needs of the underprivileged. It is a futile and dangerous effort, but one that can do great damage as it is embraced. The other is a sort of apathy or complacency about sound economics from those who know better. This apathy would be forgivable if economics were merely math, merely formulaic, merely academic. But it is the well-being of humanity on the line. And our recent amnesia of what the stakes are in this debate runs the risk of doing great harm to civilization. The times call for courage. The times call for hard work. But if the demands are high, it is because the stakes are even higher. They are nothing less than the future of human liberty, which means the future of civilization. Henry Hazlitt. It is far too easy to lose passion for that which has enabled our abundance and prosperity when we are so engulfed in the blessings of our abundance and prosperity. Our tasting of the tree of a market economy does not actually require us to know how the tree was planted. We do not need to understand economics in order to experience the benefits of freedom of exchange and production, but we may very well need to understand economics in order to sustain and maintain the institutional framework that enables us to realize the benefits that flow from freedom of exchange and production. Peter Betke. The debate over economics today is not one that just threatens the fruit from the tree, but the tree itself. The ongoing maintenance of the framework that has allowed for such unprecedented prosperity requires a review of first principles and a reaffirmation of the applications that come from these principles. Engaging this cause intellectually is a great adventure, as Hayek said, but it is also a moral imperative. I hope this book will establish, review, remind, and encourage. It is not exhaustive, nor could it be if I had wanted such. Each subject invites more granularity, more detailed study, and more debate. Yet I am convinced that such study and debate will greatly benefit from these 250 economic truths. So will the cause of human flourishing.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. Who is the true conservative? He knows that the government has no rights. He is religious. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American. Back in a minute. Thank you. What are the true conservatives' suggested political priorities? Number 1, the abolition of abortion throughout the land. Number 2, make nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons obsolete. Number 3, immediate decertification of all public employee unions. 4, the immediate assignment of criminal and civil liabilities to all government regulators. Number 5, the immediate repeal of the so-called Patriot Act. Number 6, the immediate repeal of all emergency dictator laws. Number 7, the reinstatement of writs of outlawry. 8, government-sponsored recalls, ballot initiatives, and referendums. 9, a flexible minimum wage. 10, means-tested health care. 11, the immediate and permanent prohibition of investment banking by any office holder. Back in a minute. Thank you. What are the true conservative cultural priorities? Bring back hierarchy. Bring back the admiration of intelligence, morality, and beauty. Bring back single-income households, integration, parenting, the primacy of existence, certainty of knowledge, and universal rights and wrongs. Bring back principled behavior, masculinity and femininity. Bring back Adam 12, John F. Kennedy, the gold standard, pre-HMO medical care, and nonprofit news. Bring back civil service, the term stupid question, arguments and fights, the cultural influence of the church and the Boy Scouts. Bring back the influence of social organizations such as the Lions Club and the Rotary Club. Bring back bowling. Back in a minute. Thank you. So why should anyone want to be a true conservative? Simple. Confidence. If you want to be able to leave your house every day and be confident that you can deal with whatever it is that the left is going to throw at you during the course of the day, you want to be a true conservative. You want to be able to go to work and say what you have to say, do what you have to do without fear. That's one reason to be a true conservative. Back in a minute. Thank you. So I'm listening to Squawk Box. No, not Squawk Box. Stuart Varney, who's again not here. Let's do this. Let me give you the quote here.
In Georgia, so he's going to be running for president based on the court calendar.
And Biden has some charges against him as well that we'll be talking about later. Lauren, thank you very much. This is what the Wall Street Journal had to say about this. This is a news story, not an editorial. Quote, the indictment is an extraordinary moment in which a candidate for president, Trump, has been criminally charged under an administration led by his potential 2024 rival, President Biden.
So the key words there is extraordinary moment. Remember that.
Sean Duffy joins me now. Sean, it's extraordinary, and I think the Wall Street Journal had it exactly right. I mean, this looks to all the world like election interference. I mean, that's what that description of what's going on seems to be saying to the rest of the world. Do you think it's election interference?
Absolutely. So we've heard a lot of Democrats talk about Donald Trump and Republicans being a threat to democracy. David, this is the end of democracy in America when you can use police powers, when you can use the law to go after your lead political opponent, which...
Okay, so that's good enough. So the point is that everybody's caught up in what is called, or what I call, the cult of neutrality. The Wall Street Journal said that this was an extraordinary moment. How bland. Ayn Rand identified this, by the way, decades ago. This feature, she called this the gray cult of moral uncertainty. Okay, but it's just basically the cult of neutrality. Okay, this is not an extraordinary moment. This is disgusting. Even the guest comes out and describes this in rather neutral, rather objective terms. He should be talking about how it is that he feels. Does this scare him? Does this alarm him? What is going to be the Republican response to this, by the way? Are the Republicans just going to sit back and let this happen? Are the Republicans going to rally around Donald Trump, maybe demand that the DOJ drop it? Another thing the Republicans could do is hold things hostage. Are there certain bills that what's his face wants that they can hold up and tell the president, you will get your bill when the indictment for Donald Trump is undone. Why not do that? And they haven't. What does that mean, by the way? If the Republicans have the power to affect this, but they refuse to use that power, what does that say in terms of their complicity? Because remember, there's a fistful of Republicans that are not happy with Donald Trump either, that don't like Donald Trump, that are scared to death of him. And if you're one of those people, maybe you like seeing this indictment. So, but anyways, my attitude on this one is, first of all, like I said, it's disgusting. It turns my stomach. But I say to the Democrats right here, right now, that's okay, because we will have our day. None of the top Democrats, no Democrat, as a matter of fact, on Capitol Hill can sleep easy from now on, because every one of them are going to be targets for the same kind of indictments that Donald Trump has gone through. There's going to be no mercy for any of them. For the rest of their lives, they will have to look over their shoulders, peep out the windows to see whether or not the FBI is coming to their house to serve them with a subpoena. We will go after, of course, President Biden. We will go after his vice president. We will go after all of his cabinet members. We will go after everybody all the Democrats in Congress. We will go after, starting with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. So, you want to play games? We're going to go ahead and play games and make you wish you'd never started this. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the rape of the mind.
The bureaucratic mind. In a state where terror is used to keep the people in line, the administrative machine may become the exclusive property and tool of the dictator. The development of a kind of bureaucratic absolutionism is not limited, however, to totalitarian countries. A mild form of professional absolutism is evident in every country, in the mediating class of civil servants who bridge the gap between man and his rulers. Such a bureaucracy may be used to help or to harm the citizens it should serve. It is important to realize that a peculiar silent form of battle goes on in all of the countries of the world, under every form of government. A battle between the common man and the government apparatus he himself has created. In many places, we see that this governing tool, which was originally meant to serve and assist man, has gradually obtained more power than it was intended to have. Is Saint Bureaucratus a devil who takes possession of a man as soon as he is given governmental responsibility? are administrators infected with the desire to create a sham order, to manipulate others from behind their green steel desks. Governmental techniques are no different from any other psychological strategy. The deadening hold of regimentation can take mental possession of those dedicated to it if they are not alert. And this is the intrinsic danger of the various agencies that mediate between the common man and his government. It is a tragic aspect of life that man has to place another fallible man between himself and the attainment of his highest ideals. Which human failings will manifest themselves most readily in the administrative machine? Lust for power, automatism, and mental rigidity, all these breed suspicion and intrigue. Being a high civil servant subjects man to a dangerous temptation simply because he is part of the ruling apparatus. He finds himself caught in the strategy complex. The magic of becoming an executive and a strategist provokes long-repressed feelings of omnipotence. A strategist feels like a chess player. He wants to manipulate the world by remote control. Now he can keep others waiting as he was forced to wait himself in his salad days, and thus he can feel himself superior. He can entrench himself behind his official regulations and responsibilities. At the same time, he must continually convince others of his indispensability because he is loath to vacate his seat. As a defense against his relative unimportance, he has to expand his staff, increasing his bureaucratic apparatus. In order to become a VIP, one needs a big office. Each new staff member requests new secretaries and new typewriters. Everything begins to get out of hand, but everything must be controlled. New and better files must be installed, new conferences called, and new committees set up. The Staff Interaction Committee talks for days on end. New supervisors are created to supervise the old supervisors and keep the whole group in a state of infantile servility. And what was formerly done by one man is now done by an entire staff. Finally, the bureaucratic tension becomes too great, and the managerial despotic urge looks for rest in a nervous breakdown. This creeping totalitarianism of the desk and file goes on nearly everywhere in the world. As soon as civil servants can no longer talk humanely and genially, but write down everything in black and white and keep long minutes and overflowing files, the battle for administrative power has begun. Compulsive order, red tape, and regulation become more important than freedom and justice. And in the meantime, suspicion between management, employees, and subjects increases. Written and printed documents and reports have become dangerous objects in the world. After a conversation, even when there are harsh words, inanities are soon forgotten. But on paper, these words are perpetuated and can become part of a system of growing suspicion. Many people become administrators in public affairs out of idealistic feelings of service and advocation. Others try to escape the adventure of life by becoming part of the civil service corps. Such service assures them a settled income, regular promotion, and a sense of job security. It is very alluring, this feeling of security. The smooth automatism and polished rigidity of the red tape world is very attractive to certain types of men, but it may devitalize others who still believe in challenge and spontaneity. The burning psychological question is whether man will eventually master his institutions so that these will serve him and not rule him. In totalitarian countries, one is not permitted to see the humor of one's own shortcomings. The system, the red tape, and the manifold files become more important than the poor being lost in his chair behind a huge desk, looking much too important for his mental bearings. The art of being a leading administrator, of being a genuine representative of the people, is a difficult one, requiring multiple empathy and identification with other people and their motivations. Diplomats and politicians still believe in verbal persuasion and argumentative tactics. It is a very old and alluring game, this strategy of political maneuvering with official slogans and catchwords. The subtlety of bypassing the truth in the service of partisanship, of giving faulty emphasis. The skill of dancing around selected arguments to arrive at personal propagandistic aims or party aims. Sooner or later, nearly all politicians become infected with the bug. Under the burden of their responsibilities, they give in to the desire to play the game of diplomacy. They start to compromise in their thinking, to bend backwards, and to be circumspect, lest their remarks be criticized by the higher echelons. Or they fall back into infantile feelings of magic omnipotence. They want to have their fingers in every pie, to the left and to the right. All these are dangerous mental streaks of every human being, which can develop more easily in politicians and administrators because of the growing impact of modern governmental techniques and their threat to free expression. When a man gets entangled in a strategical and political talk, something changes in his attitude. He's no longer straightforward. He doesn't express and communicate what he thinks, but he worries about what others are thinking about him behind their facades. He becomes too prudent and starts to build all kinds of mental defenses and justifications around himself. In short, he learns to assume the strategic attitude. Forget spontaneity. Deny enthusiasm. Don't demand inner honesty of yourself or others. Never reveal yourself. Never expose yourself. Play the strategist. Be careful and use more buts and howevers. Never commit yourself. I remember a leader of the opposition who became completely confused and nearly collapsed when, after a long time out of office, his party won an election and he had to assume governmental responsibility. From an aggressive, outspoken critic, he became a hesitating, insinuating neurotic, playing the tactful strategist, having no real initiative. Some politicians are puppets, spokesmen of their bosses. Some are the cavalier jugglers of words who transfer human aggressions into slogans. There are also loud-mouthed trumpeters of doom who resort to the argument of panic. Modern politics is carried out with obsolete rules of conversation, communication, and discussion. And too few politicians are aware of the semantic pitfalls, the emotional dishonesties of the word tools they must use to convince others. Yet mutual understanding can become a basis of political strategy. It is not power politics with verbal deceit and catchwords that is needed, but mental probing to find ways in which proposals and suggestions may cut through the resistance of those with different opinions and motivations. Politicians too often forget that their fight for administrative power may become a form of psychological warfare against the integrity of the minds of those who are compelled to listen. The repetitious mutual calumny, so often used during elections, gradually undermines the democratic system and leads to the urge for authoritarian control. The strategic rumors and suspicions the politicians sow are an attack on human integrity. When the citizenry no longer has confidence in its leaders, it looks for the man with brute power to be its leader. Where is the politician who is willing to admit that his opponent is at least as capable as he, and perhaps even more capable than he is? In the free admission of equality, of ability, and of the wisdom of his opponent lies the politician's chance for cooperation. For true cooperation can only be brought about by mutual empathy and sympathy in the understanding of human faults. In April 1951, a group of psychologists, psychoanalysts, and social scientists affiliated with the United Nations, the World Federation of Mental Health, UNESCO, and the World Health Organization were guests of the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation in New York. This was a meeting at which these problems of government and the impact of governmental systems were explored and discussed and published later in a report. These experts have become more and more aware of the need for psychological education and selection of government administrators. Should our administrators be psychoanalyzed? This nearly utopian question does not predicate an immediate rush for psychological training for politicians and administrators, but it does point toward a future period when practical intelligence and sound psychological knowledge will guide man in the various aspects of his life. Education will be more fully permeated with dependable psychological knowledge. Psychology and psychoanalysis are still young sciences, but many of our present-day politicians could already profit by them. Through gain and self-insight, they would become more secure in the strategy of world guidance. They would assume more responsibility, not only for their successes, but also for their failures. And they would take more responsibility with fewer inner qualms for the good and welfare of all. At this very moment, our failure to solve the problems of governmental inefficiency and bureaucratic intrusion into human actions may hamper the citizen's mind in its development. Man's need to conform is in constant battle with man's need to go out on his own. The tie-up of our spontaneous, free thinking and the unadventurous administrative mind has to be studied, and the problem it presents solved by the psychology of the future.
And that was The Bureaucratic Mind by Joost-Meerlo, MD, from The Rape of the Mind. Back in a minute. Thank you. So, how can you be a true conservative? by watching your language and understanding that the left wins or appears to win because they set it up that way. They set things up so that the argument is puts them in the position where they can win and you cannot. For instance, what's happening at the border. If somebody asks you, if they say, hey, what's your position on the migrants? Then you should say, migrants? You mean migratory animals? I don't have any position on migratory animals. And then they'll say, well, no. I mean, the people that are coming across the border. Oh, you mean the human beings that are immigrating to this country? Are you talking about the immigrants that are coming here with green cards? Or are you talking about the immigrants that come here without green cards? Okay, so now what you're doing is you're in the process of setting the argument up so that you can't lose. If the argument is about illegal immigration, we can't lose. If the argument is about migration, there's no way we can win. Second example is somebody says to you, hey, what do you think we should do about the homeless? Oh, you mean there was a fire or a flood or some kind of natural disaster and people lost their homes? And they come back, no, I'm talking about the people that live on the street. Oh, you mean you're talking about the squatters and trespassers? Well, that's a problem that has an obvious solution. See? Again, you set the argument up so that you cannot lose. Not only are you setting it up so you cannot lose, because it's not just a power thing, it's a right and wrong thing. Calling the people that live on the street homeless is wrong. It does no justice to the people that are truly homeless. For instance, the people in Pacific Palisades. There were 6, 8, 10, 12 homes that were burned up in a fire. A forest fire or brush fire, whatever it was, took out 6, 8, 10, 12 homes, and those families were truly homeless. But you'll notice those families didn't go and live in Skid Row. They didn't start shooting up drugs. They didn't live in a tent. They went with the Red Cross and stayed probably in a high school gym until they can make other arrangements to live with friends or neighbors or stay in a hotel and start rebuilding. Those are the people that are truly homeless. The ones on the street, they're trespassers and they're squatters. And you don't have to come out and say, well, they should be arrested. No, just say the solution to that problem is obvious, and it is. Okay, squatters and trespassers. What should happen to squatters and trespassers? We don't have to have a discussion about that. We know what's supposed to happen to them. Okay, so again, frame the argument. If you want more information on how to frame an argument, Dr. Lakoff, Lakoff, PhD, and he has several books, but two that I'd recommend. The one being the best one being "Don't Think of an Elephant," and I've been playing that on my podcast now and again. But it gives you an idea of how to frame arguments. And with us, it's really easy because if we frame the argument around reality, it's a cinch. Think about it. Back in a minute. Thank you. So now a little bit from MSNBC and that about Donald Trump's indictment that I think is very interesting. Take a listen.
You have to wonder if the Justice Department is considering whether there is some political solution to this criminal problem, whether part of the issue here is not just that Trump has committed crimes, but that Trump has committed crimes and plans on being back in the White House. Do they consider, as part of a potential plea offer, something that would proscribe him from running for office again? I don't know.
I would imagine if anything like that happened, that it would have to come from the defense side of the negotiation. That the Trump team would say, oh, by the way, and with this, we will also, drop out of the race for president. Otherwise, it would put the Justice Department in this position that Donald Trump claims they're in. He claims they're simply trying to stop him from becoming president again, and that's the only reason.
I have to wonder if the Justice...
So, there you are. This is what I was talking about yesterday. I said that what they're really looking for him to do, and they're dropping hints now. They're dropping hints all over the place. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if there's already communication between the Defense Department and Donald Trump and his team about having Trump quit the race. Trump quits, everything goes away. And they love that idea. They would sell it saying, oh, you don't want to put your people through it. You don't want to put the American people through it. You don't want to do this, that, and the other thing. You had many accomplishments. Don't ruin it, that kind of crapola. But I hope that Donald Trump understands that if he quits, this is the worst possible thing that he could do, because to quit the race is tantamount to a confession. But again, here's MSNBC telling you exactly what I told you yesterday, that the aim here is not to perp walk Donald Trump. It's not to convict him of anything. It's to put sufficient pressure on him to encourage him to quit. Back in a minute. Thank you. So now for tonight's You Decide, it is going to be the presidential announcements of Vivek-Ramaswamy versus Donald Trump. First up, Vivek-Ramaswamy.
We're in the middle of a national identity crisis. Faith, patriotism, and hard work have disappeared, only to be replaced by new secular religions like COVIDism, climatism, and gender ideology. We hunger to be part of something bigger than ourselves, yet we cannot even answer the question of what it means to be an American. Today, the woke left preys on that vacuum. They tell you that your race, your gender, and your sexual orientation govern who you are, what you can achieve, and what you're allowed to think. This is psychological slavery, and that has created a new culture of fear in our country that has completely replaced our culture of free speech in America. And that is why today I am announcing my run for President of the United States. This isn't just a political campaign. This is a cultural movement to create a new American dream for the next generation. To me, the American dream means you believe in merit, that you get ahead in this country not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. It means you believe the people who we elect to run the government are the ones who actually run the government, not a federal bureaucracy that grows like a national cancer that is now metastasizing to the private sector. It means that the best ideas win instead of getting censored. It means you don't have to choose between speaking your mind freely and putting food on the dinner table. It means you believe these ideals form the backbone of the greatest nation on earth, that the rest of the world still looks up to as its example, not the Soviet Union in the last century and not communist China in this one either. That is the new American dream. Ask yourself if you believe in these ideals. I think most of you do. I think most of you believe your neighbors do too, though you can't be sure because you don't feel free to talk about it anymore. You might disagree with each other about corporate tax rates or about whether ivermectin treats COVID, but those are details. We still agree on our nation's most fundamental principles. At least most of us do. Yet the goal of the ruling party in this country is to convince us that we are divided. Why? So they can accumulate more power for themselves. Well, you know what? I have a dream that we can be one people again. We have obsessed so much over our diversity and our differences that we forgot all the ways we're really just the same as Americans, bound together by a common set of ideals that brought together a divided, diverse, headstrong group of people 250 years ago. And I believe deep in my bones that those ideals still exist, and I am running for president to revive them. E pluribus unum. from many, one. That is the dream that won the American Revolution. That is the dream that reunited us after the Civil War. That is the dream that won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is the dream that still gives hope to the free world today. And if we can revive that dream over fractious group identity, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what we will need to revive to save this great nation.
Okay, that was Vivek-Ramaswamy, and now Donald Trump.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. Thank you, kids. Thank you. All of you. Thank you. Thank you. So many incredible friends and family here tonight. It's such a beautiful thing. Some people say, how do you speak before so many people all the time? When there's love in the room, it's really easy. If you want to know that it really is. You ought to try it sometime. Together we will be taking on the most corrupt forces and entrenched interests imaginable. Our country is in a horrible state. We're in grave trouble. This is not a task for a politician or a conventional candidate. This is a task for a great movement that embodies the courage, confidence, and the spirit of the American people. This is a movement. This is not for any one individual. This is a job for tens of millions of proud people working together from all across the land and from all walks of life, young and old, black and white, Hispanic and Asian, many of whom we have brought together for the very, very first time. If you look at the numbers, if you look at what's happened with Hispanic, with African American, with Asian, and just look at what's happening, this is a party that has become much bigger, much stronger, much more powerful, can do much more good for our country. This is a job for grandmothers and construction workers, firefighters, builders, teachers, doctors, and farmers who cannot stay quiet any longer. You can't stay quiet any longer. You're angry about what's happening to our country. Our country is being destroyed before your very eyes. It's a job for every aspiring young person and every hard-working parent, for every entrepreneur and underappreciated police officer who is ready to shout for safety in America. The police are being treated so badly. These are great people. They can straighten out the crime. They're the ones that know how to do it. We have to give them back their respect and their dignity. This will not be my campaign. This will be our campaign all together. Because the only force strong enough to defeat the massive corruption we are up against is you, the American people. It's true. The American people, the greatest people on earth. We love them all. And we love both sides. We're going to bring people together. We're going to unify people. And it was happening in the previous administration, previous to the previous. And what was bringing them together was success. Prior to COVID coming in, the people were calling me, you wouldn't believe it. People that were so far left, I figured they'd never speak to me and I would never speak to them. But our success was so incredible.
You've been listening
like never before.
To the former president announcing that he is running for president again, rewriting the history most recently.
Okay, so that was Donald Trump. So you've heard Vivek Ramaswamy and Donald Trump. You decide. Back in a minute. Thank you. Who is the liberal? He is the man that seeks consensus. He is subjective, petty, and small, taking everything in life personally. He's outrageous, boring, and rude. He pretends to be a leader and a change agent. He pretends that he's your friend. He is sly, cunning, and deceptive. He dresses, acts, and speaks like a slob. He's informal and terminally unique. He's childish and pretends that he knows nothing. He has no conscience and pretends that might makes right and that the ends justify the means. He is impulsive and rationalizes his behavior. He is deterministic, blaming others for his mistakes. He is skeptical, demanding that others solve his problems. His unreasonableness and irresponsibility make him a bad role model, bad father, brother, family member, friend, and a bad person, period. So if you think that you can be friends with a socialist, think again. Back in a minute. Thank you. I'm Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all of the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. And until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.